On today's podcast, we're talking about how music can impact a community. Joining us today is Danny Rosin, co-founder of Band Together, an annual music festival nonprofit. He's also the co-founder of Brandfuel, a strategic brand merchandising company. And Danny has 30 years of experience in community building, philanthropy, and marketing. And I could reel off all of your accomplishments, but let's just get started. Danny, thank you.
Yeah, Brandon, thanks for having me.
So what have you been up to? Tell us a little bit about what's been going on in your world.
Oh my gosh. So I'll compartmentalize. I'll start with family, because I think that's important. I've got 2 teenage daughters, and we're talking about music and community, so raising some kids to be able to appreciate music and find their voice in that, and like their favorite bands, which used to be about the beats. Now I think it's becoming a little bit more about the lyrics. I'm kind of telling them that, I think you find your favorite band when you find the beats and the lyrics, and you find your people, your best friends and the people you want to go do things with, and they understand the language of the bands that you love most. On the community side, we're a pretty active family in the community and volunteering and things like that. There's kind of the idea, like as kids, today I think they have a requirement to do community service. I wish it was an elective to find the thing that they want to do versus having to check a box to get into college. So my wife and I, Nicole, have tried to get our 2 daughters, Brooke and Tyler, invested in community things that they really enjoy and doing things with their friends. So A Place at the Table is a good example. I serve on the board where they both volunteer and just love it. Moving to Brandfuel, we had a great year last year, but we're going through a season of change. We hadn't had anybody leave the company in almost 3 years, which I think when you think about, we've been at it for 25 years, think about success of like business, you think, top line, bottom line growth, and that's important, but we all know staff makes that happen. We have an incredible staff, but right now we're going through a little bit of turnover and some key roles that we're trying to rethink, which is really hard for us because people aren't used to it. I think they trust the company. I mean, we're a B Corp, so we got certified. That's really important. So we take care of people. We're invested in social impact. We do the right thing. We're super ethical, but change is tough. And so we're going through a season of change right now while we're going through growth, and that's hard. My business partner and 25 years and friend of 40, that relationship is like the bedrock for everything, I think. Us being able to move the company forward and just some key people to help us get there. But I'm excited about the industry and where it's going, and the branded merch world. Cooler designs, better messaging, thinking about digital and physical coming together in digital marketing ways. And then the ethical, sustainable stuff that we're working on as well is really, I'm just so excited about. Just got asked to join the PPAI board, which oversees the industry, so I'll have a voice and be able to help advocate for an industry that I think can be seen as a real plastic crap kind of industry, and so evolving that mentality is also important. And then last, community. I'll just start with Band Together and probably end with it because I think if I'm defined by anything in this community, it's that, and I know that's what we want to get into, and I've just joined the board maybe 6 months ago after leading the organization for 13 years, staying in the boardroom for a few years after that, and then a forced exit. I had to leave and to let it grow, which was really hard. I left kicking and screaming, but still involved, still fundraising all these years, still helping picking bands. We've got some announcements I might be able to leak a little bit to you, and I'm excited about the future of what that organization is doing for this community through the power of live music.
Yeah, I mean, with your company, Brandfuel, it's been a company that I've always looked at and always admired your work.
Thank
and
you.
You guys, every time I talk with you and you and I get together and I check out what's going on with Brandfuel, you guys are growing. How many years?
So 25 years.
25 years. So that's an amazing feat. So congratulations
Thanks.
on that. So sort of back to the music side. I mean, I see you out at events. I see you posting about being at live shows. What are some shows that you've been to recently? Anything that's kind of
Oh my gosh. I'll give you the great divide, Brandon. I'll start at the big one. My wife hit her 50th year on this earth, and we've been doing some fun things together to celebrate that. We decided to go out to Death Valley, California, to go hiking and just I think, consume one of the most beautiful places on this earth. But 2 hours away is a place called Las Vegas, and the most unnatural thing called the Sphere, where there are a lot of people inside a venue that is like no other, $2.3 billion investment. And so the first thing I would say is we started with U2, and a band that we both love and we've seen many times together. And the stories go way back to sneaking in at Kenan Stadium when I was in college to see that band back in the 80s. And then just like the Great Divide too is kind of like I was slam dancing at the Night Rider, which is a gay bar. I'm not gay, but I'm going to all this stuff as a 56-year-old guy with a bunch of young people with a band called Cigarettes at Sunset, which I'd never heard before, which I love and you need to check out. So I'm there wherever the band is playing that's gutting it out on stage and bringing people together and having fun. I'm all about it.
I think headbanging, for example, or just sort of the mosh pit. That's an example of the energy that music transfers from on stage to when you're at a live event. You can't really recapture that. I'm trying to think of another place that you could duplicate that same thing in life. Generally, what is it about live music that energizes you? I mean, and what do you think makes it so special, just generally, just to be there, that's so unique about it? Because been to a lot of shows, and I can say, I mean, you hear people say sometimes, "Oh, that show was great. It was transformative. Like it made me, If you hear someone say the word transformative, there aren't that many times you're going to hear someone say that, right? Generally speaking,
in life.
Yeah. What is it?
Yeah, well, so interesting thing. So one thing about the mosh pit. So I grew up loving the Ramones and the Clash and all those bands, and my business partner and I would go to those shows. We would use our brothers' IDs to sneak in because we were underage to see shows. Been seeing shows since I was young, and so my friends and I mean, it started there. Like, what show can we go to? What can we sneak into? What fake IDs can we get in to see? That is translated to my business partner and I. We have 2 meetings early in the morning each week, and it's called the Mosh Pit meeting. Okay. And it's a meeting when we get into it. It's just he and I, and so that is translated into business for which I think is kind of like a metaphor for life if you think about it. The mosh pit and these high energy shows, like there are just times in life where you get your ass kicked and you're down in the middle of the mosh pit and people are dancing around you, and inevitably someone picks you up, whether that's you and you got to get up and go again, or a stranger who helps you out, or one of your friends that helps you out, so you can get up and get dancing again and just go. So I think that energy and the idea that we're not going to sit at home and watch TV a lot. We're going to use the time on this earth to be more invested and involved in community and our families, and do things that really matter. So, I think for me, I'll call it a disease. I was reading about this study that came out, as a European study recently. I call it a disease. I think it's a good disease, but the way that music affects certain people, you can have a visceral response to it. And I typically will count the number of times that I get goosebumps at a show. So you were talking about transformative. There are moments in shows, and we can talk about those forever, where I get goosebumps and I am feeling something that I've never felt before. And if I'm experiencing that with my wife or my daughters or my best friends or my coworkers, my employees, I think that time that we're sharing together builds community and culture, and kind of helps you find values in this life as well. What's important, that meaning of like doing something that actually is enjoyable. So I'm always trying to find the joy in life, and I find a lot of it in live music.
I mean, just tying it back to what we do, we're both in the branding and marketing industry and on sort of different sides of it there, but those are things that we are trying to capture for brands, right? You think about feeling, you think about, values that we're trying to communicate. So like there's a connection there, right, between what we try to do in a much more stodgy way, I guess, in business branding and marketing. It's like that's captured in music, and it just interests me, like what is it about that that makes us feel a certain way when we're at a live event. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think your point about the branding is a really good one. Your name is basically branding, right, Brandon?
Brandon, yeah,
Brandon, yeah, which I love. It would be an interesting way to approach a company to ask them about the band that their brand most relates to, and I think there's a lot of value in an exercise like that. Music's a big part of Brandfuel, and matter of fact, you take the R out of brand, and you've got Bandfuel, which is a URL we own that I hope we do something fun with one day. But we actually interviewed our entire staff one time, and we asked them two questions: what's your favorite band, and why? And we asked them to wear a branded T-shirt with their favorite band on them, and you can find this online. And the stories that they told, the connections that they had with those bands, for whatever reason, a memory. You were talking about like the feeling you have about a band. Brands are brands as well. You can think about that for sure.
Yeah, music's a big thing for us here too at Brasco. We have lyrics up in the bathroom of some of our team's favorite. That's our musical bathroom.
I love it.
So yeah, we definitely can relate with that. And I love the mosh pit meeting idea. I can just visualize you and your business partner, and they're just airing it all out, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Gotta do it.
But at the end of the day, it's like like you said, you kind of pick each other up because you're in it together.
That's right.
So I love that. Tell us a little bit about Band Together. Tell us a little bit about what it is and what it's doing in the community right now. For those who may not know, I know a lot, and you and I've had conversations, and I've been to it and love it. But just tell us a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, so historically, I think it goes back to a question probably a lot of us ask when there's a tragedy in this world or your community or your home, and that's what's mine to do in this moment. And I asked myself that a lot. And in 2001, when the Twin Towers came down, that question was asked amongst a handful of friends, and first response was, let's do something about it. Let's have a wine tasting. Let's invite our friends. We'll charge $250 a couple. And my response to that was, I was thinking bigger. I was like, we don't really have that many friends. $5,000 isn't going to do a whole lot for these families of fallen victims of this tragedy. And so the response that I had was to put together a live concert, to fly firefighters down to North Carolina to tell the story about what had happened up there, have corporate sponsors, to allow firefighters and policemen and women to come to a concert for free, and to sell tickets to everybody else, the local community. And it worked. We raised $60,000. It took 3 weeks to put together. We never put a concert on before. We called it Band Together for Our Heroes. And we realized that we were onto something, that music can and should build community. And so from there, we went to a structure of raising money for a different nonprofit every year. And then about 6 or 7 years in, I led the board through a strategy of changing the preposition of raising money for to raising money with a nonprofit. And so this became our calling card: open source, collaborative philanthropy, and partnership philanthropy that took us from raising couple $100,000 to $400,000 or $500,000, and then we focused on investing in capacity building and moving out of a guy who had been running this organization, half of his day, and not taking care of his family or his company as much as he probably should, because he was so committed to community and building this thing that he just loved. I'm talking about me, and others suffering around me a bit, to realizing that had to change. And so through capacity building and hiring a full-time person in Matt Strickland and now Thorne Dobbins-Speck, and those that have worked with them have helped us go from raising $500,000 to $1 million every single year. We're doing sellout shows at Red Hat Amphitheater. The small but big adjustment as well around raising money for a different vetted cause or nonprofit every year has moved to a theme. Not a lot of nonprofits can digest $1 million without maybe going out of business. Scaling a nonprofit, when they get a big chunk of money, and digesting that is hard. And so now working on with a group of nonprofits that have been vetted, focusing on a key community issue like housing or like we're looking at mental health this year with a housing component is what we're doing. And it's like the sacred cow is the live music and bringing community together. But I do believe that the most powerful thing that we bring to the community is the different touch point every year. And so that's extremely hard, working with a different nonprofit and a different theme and the fundraising cycle. But also this idea that nonprofits should be partnering together versus being more insular and protective. And we do this when they can really collaborate and do much more.
I can remember, I think the first time we met, I was working with a nonprofit. I was on a board of a nonprofit, and I tracked you down because I said, I need to meet the guy who's got this Band Together thing, because this is something I need to get this nonprofit involved with. And of course, we just had other conversations and continue to stay in touch and stay friends. But name some of the nonprofits that you guys have worked with and how it's impacted those groups.
Obviously we've got 23 years of nonprofit partners. Tammy Lynn Center, and we could move down the line. Lucy Daniels, Operation Smile. We've done work lately for the YMCA of the Triangle, Step Up Ministry. You could think about all of the organizations around housing insecurity, like Passage Home and Habitat for Humanity, like kind of all facets of those organizations that are touching housing in some way. Triangle Family Services. The list is really long. And I kind of getting a little bit of swelling with pride a little bit, because I'm just like, man, like there's a lot of organizations we've helped.
Thinking back.
I'm super proud of that. But also these organizations, they're doing a lot of the work. So they're not just getting a handout, a big check from us. They're having to get in and really immersively sell tickets and do fundraising. And I think they're realizing what they are made of. They're challenging their boards and their fundraising staff to go from here to here for a one-time opportunity. $1 million is at stake. And then I also think, when I think about these organizations, some of which have grown significantly, I think Step Up's probably the best example. Now there's multiple Step Ups. They put their dreams into play because of the relationship that we have with them. They did all the work. We put on a big concert, we did our thing, but they put their plan into action, and so now they're serving more people. And I don't know what the ripple effect looks like, but I know we've improved a lot of lives around here. But my favorite thing, I think, when I think about these nonprofits, is that they're coming to us with innovative ideas that are making them broaden their horizons and think creatively about, if we could get a check for $1 million or $200,000, what could we do with it that's different, that could make some of the challenges go away, or to help more people, or capacity building in a lot of ways, to hire a staff member to do more and different work and to branch out. And those are the things I get really excited about.
Yeah, I can imagine, like you said, if you get a one-time infusion of $1 million and you don't have a plan to scale, you don't really know what that next step is, what happens next year when you don't get that infusion, what happens to how you've staffed up. You have to be prepared for those things. So I think it makes a lot of sense that you have a plan, sort of vetting out nonprofits and making sure that they're truly aligned with what this is going to do for them and how this can help fuel their growth.
Yeah, amen.
Makes a lot of sense. You mentioned boards, you mentioned people. Obviously, I'm sure it takes to put on a big event like this. It takes a lot of volunteers, a lot of people. You have business partners, you have a board. Talk to us, about why that's important for anyone that's trying to put together any type of event, or if you're just trying to put together your own nonprofit. Like, how is it important to have a board and to have volunteers and people around you, and how do you use that to really fuel Band Together's growth?
Yeah, I think most organizations that starting out, I call them stage one organizations. They've got to get to stage two. Stage one is like you're doing all the work of the organization yourself as a board, and at some point in time you've got to grow through that to get to stage two board, which would be a board that focuses on strategy and governance and fundraising. And those, so I think process is important. I also like to think about nonprofits as for-profits. Like, how would a for-profit behave? Mm-hmm. And so, Brandon, if you were the executive director of the nonprofit that I started and we hired you, and you are this incredibly talented person, but we pay you, this much. But if you were a CEO of a company doing similar work, we paid you this much. There's a disconnect there, and so I think thinking about investing in great people is where it starts. I think having how to execute the vision. I talk a lot about two very, very important pieces to that puzzle. One is you've got to have passion and optimism and probably a degree of rebellion, but you've really got to believe in what you're doing, or you're going to burn out and you're going to forget the why. The Simon Sinek thing, the question zero. Why do you exist? When you sit in a boardroom, you've got all the tables of all the people trying to do this work of growing this organization, doing the work of the organization, but you should probably leave a chair empty in there to remind people this is why we do it, for that hungry child, for that homeless person. The second thing is, and this is a Danny Rosin thing, and I don't think it's applicable to all nonprofits, but I do think that fun, if you can build fun around your nonprofit, whether that's in the boardroom and there's connective tissue to people just enjoying working together, or like we've done so well, people want to go to a concert. That's fun. If we can bring you along into the fundraising, writing a check, volunteering for Band Together side of things, but can we build a stronger community because we bring people to a fun event and we deliver on value and branding impact and storytelling and why we exist. And if we've done that and we've done a good job, then we can pull you in to buying more tickets, donating your time, your treasure, your talent. And so I think Band Together's been successful through the years. Yes, concerts, yes, the collaborative, philanthropy thing, but I think there's a core group of people that love being together, that are volunteers, that never leave. And I don't mean board members. Board members do stick around, and it's a coveted role there. But if you get people that want to be together, they don't care about who the band is. They don't care about what the cause is. They're there because they love working together in a common, united goal and a front. And it's no different than a business or a brand. Find people that want to work together, and the rest will fall in place.
Yeah, I think fun is a word that a lot of brands would like to be associated with, or have shown, or have sort of come out of their own brand. And so I think if you can be the keeper of the fun, right, you're doing something right. And speaking of keeping the fun, and music is a big part of that. When I was at my favorite Band Together event was with Hall & Oates.
Oh, gosh, great.
Because maybe I don't want to admit this, I'm a closet Hall & Oates fan.
You play guitar? Do you sing too? Are you going to sing?
Yeah. I'm a little Daryl Hall.
Let's hear it.
I actually was going to bring my guitar down. Completely walked out the house without it. I need to just leave it here.
Shaming you right now.
But no, I had a good time with that one. Talk to us about who were some of the acts that you've had at, and which one was just your favorite for whatever reason. You've had a lot of folks that have been there and played.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So Hall & Oates for sure. I'll love it. Trampled by Turtles, Krungbin, Jason Isbell. We had Turnpike Troubadours recently. I'm trying to go back a little bit. The bands that we've had, it's interesting. We've had a lot of like nostalgia bands because we're catering to maybe an audience that's a little bit older and has a little bit more financial wherewithal, to moving into bands that are maybe a little bit younger, so we can work on succession planning, getting young people into the organization and broadening the spectrum of, our fans and fanatics that support us. We are, I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you a story about something that really impacted me, because there are a lot of times at these shows where I'm, shaking hands and kissing babies, and backstage, and I'm not one to really hang out with the bands much, although sometimes I get to meet them, like Ben Folds and Michael Franti and some of these others are just good people to kind of hang out and get to know a little bit. But I like getting out with everybody else and just being out there in the middle and just looking around. I can start crying. It's kind of heavy, man, when you're staying out there, 6,000 people, everybody's having a good time, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like $1 million going into this, like this is incredible. But what the story I like to tell is being, I think it was Trampled by Turtles, because we were supporting Kids Notes, which is a great nonprofit that supports kids who typically are not getting good grades. Their families are not connected to the schools that they go to very well. They don't speak English. They've got 4 jobs. They're on free and reduced lunch plans. And so this organization provides free instruments, free education with those instruments, so 10 hours, and then transportation to and from their homes after school. And so this is an organization that's not only focusing on music, which is connected to the Band Together brand, but they're helping these kids get confidence, better grades, feel more connected to their communities in so many ways. And so the Kids Notes kids were on stage before Trampled by Turtles. And I'm out in the hoi polloi, just like feeling it. And there's this tall guy next to me, and he is crying. And he's probably 40 years old. And like, man, what's going on with this guy? I felt kind of bad I didn't know it was happening at the time, but after the song was played by the kids and everybody's clapping, I was like, hey man, are you okay? And he's like, I'm great. He's like, how are you? I was like, oh man, you were crying. I was just want to make sure you're okay. I was like, oh, these are happy tears. He said, see that kid up there, third from whatever left? He said, that's my son. And he was like, man, like this kid was, he said, when I was growing up, like I thought my kid would be where I was, which is like the only way I could make money is sell drugs, play football or basketball, like all these stereotypes. He said, I was so worried that I have this kid that would never have an opportunity to sit on a stage with a violin. And I was just like, oh man, I still don't know who I am, but I never told him. I gave him one of those just like warm embrace handshakes that I'll never forget. And it just reminded me back to the why, like, why are we doing this? Yeah. And it really hit home. So there are moments like that all the time for me in the music scene.
Yeah. And happy tears are welcome on the On Brand podcast, especially when the work that you're doing is just, I mean, again, this is what I'm talking about. This is why we're having this conversation, is how music can impact the community.
Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly what we're doing here. And so, to kind of think a little bit about that, maybe just all right, let's assume Danny and Brandon are going to create our own music festival. Let's just pretend like you've never done this before. Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, no, I don't. I want to use your experience. But let's just sort of put Band Together aside for a second. Let's just assume you and I are starting a new music festival. Because I do think people out there who are watching or listening, they are interested in starting an event. It may not be a music event, but it could be a music event. Mm-hmm. I think people are interested in what goes into it. What is required? What should we be thinking about? How should we plan for our event? What are some things that you would tell, either a young entrepreneur, a nonprofit, just a solo person who has an idea, who wants to create an event? What are some things you want them to think about?
Yeah. So, I mean, first I would say, like, especially if it's around a nonprofit or community, it's got to be about the why, and you've got to find again that passion, that optimism, that rebellion, in that moment, like that you really believe in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. If it's a for-profit kind of thing or just a regular event, I mean, again, you want to think about the why. Is it that you want to get 10 new clients out of this event? How are we going to do that? And so really thinking about, what do you want the end result to be? Second, I would say get the right people quickly. The influencers, the people that also believe in, and like everything else kind of falls into place. Same thing with sponsorships. Mm-hmm. Once you get that, I call them anchor tenants. Yeah. And an anchor tenant in like a, it might be like a Harris Teeter, and everything else falls into place, the nail salons and the coffee places. Get the anchor tenant, get the big sponsor. You can say so-and-so is committed to doing this, let's go. And then I would say go big or go home. A lot of organizations try and do these fundraising events with regards to using like live music or whatever, and they're trying to get the bands to play for free. Pay the bands. These are artists, they're musicians, they're going to help you. They need money too, but go big with the way you're thinking. I think once you get the anchor tenant, people that are going to help, the sponsors are going to help, you've got to get the right bands. So you get some local bands, you might get 100 people to show up. You get, Trampled by Turtles when they're on the upswing, you're going to sell out a place, and you're going to figure out the money later. It makes the sponsorships a lot easier. It makes getting people to come along for the ride a lot easier when you have that big anchor tenant. And I could talk more about that, but I kind of want to ask you, Brandon. I mean, you're with the branding experience that you have and the incredible work you guys do here. Like, what is that you would do from a branding and marketing perspective? Because I think there's a massive component there. You can go out, raise money, you can have a great cause, you know, hopefully sell some tickets, but like you've got to market, you've got to get this in front of the right people so that people will sponsor, people will volunteer, the time, treasure, talent will get into place. What do you suggest?
Yeah, so I love how you guys do a great job of bringing brands on board and getting them involved. And so I'm actually curious a little bit more about how you do that. But for me, it's about adding value for those brands. So, you know, if it's a construction company, but then it's also so that's a B2B brand. Maybe it's a commercial construction company versus it's a coffee shop. Well, they have very different marketing goals, right? A B2B versus a B2C. So how are we, as a music festival in this situation or an event, how are we adding value for those brands, and how are we then selling them and sort of not selling, but pitching that idea to them, sort of pulling them into why this can really be beneficial to them? I think over time, like now it's easier. Time makes things a little bit easier for you guys, because as you grow, you have stature, your brand has continued to grow. You can pretty much pick up the phone and say, hey, Danny Rosin with Band Together, and you're probably going to be able to get some folks to sign on because we know, we've been there, we've seen it, we've heard about it. Credibility's there. So I would say in the early days of an event, if I'm creating a new event, in fact, we've had this conversation with a client recently who's not established. Their brand is established, but they want to have an event and they have not really established this, so they're trying to get this going a little bit. And so what we're trying to do is make sure we really identify what the value is going to be for our partners that we bring on. So, I mean, as long as that is clear and as long as that makes sense, I mean, if the value's there, they're going to sign up if people are there. And if, again, keeper of the fun, I think is a key part of this. Yeah. If we know this is going to be a good time, a good event, good music, good people, if the recipe is there, I feel like I love your go big, because that's the scary part. If I'm starting an event, is that going big is a little bit scary. But if I can plan ahead for what I think the costs are going to be, so that I can have I can try to get the partners to match up those costs, do the math on the ticket sales, do my projections a little bit on my budget, and I'm feeling okay, then going big is a little bit easier in that situation versus just going big, blindly going big with an event is, to me, a little bit scary. But yeah, if from a brand perspective, I'm thinking about, how I want to position my event, or how I want the brands that are signing up to be a partner with me, how I want them to get value.
I love that.
As well.
So the value thing is like a key point for us when we're fundraising. So a lot of nonprofits go out and say, hey, write a check, we're serving these people. We're saying, write a check, we're serving these people, but we're going to give you something in exchange for that. So I always talk about like corporate love languages. And so, you and your wife have love languages. Hopefully you know what.
The 5 love languages.
Yeah, what they are. Right?
Whatever yours isn't is what you're not good at.
That's right.
Or whatever, yeah, right.
Yeah, so you got to figure that out. So for us, we talk about the value being in the love languages. So for some companies, they want silent philanthropy. They just want to write a check. They don't want tickets. They just want the money to go to the cause. Some want really massive branding impact. So they want to be on stage. They want announcements. They want to be on the printed tickets, on the VIP lanyards. They want to be. Some want to bring their employees or their customers to the event. I mean, we have tickets. So all of a sudden you're getting this VIP treatment for your staff. What a great perk. What a great, incredible perk. And then, we talk about activations and events. So Wegmans is a good example. They are a sponsor and they feed all our volunteers, but they also write us a check, and then they do activations where they have maybe some Wegmans branded products at the event that they're just distributing and letting people know they've just come into the market. And then the last one, which is my favorite one, it's not easy to execute on, but is employee volunteer engagement. So if we can get, if I could say to Fidelity Charitable or Fidelity writes a check, we will create a volunteer opportunity for your staff to come out of this, to be a part of this thing with these nonprofits, to help them on the front lines and volunteer. And if they do that, then they get tickets to the show. And I think about employees, but also their extended families that can come. And so you bring your wife, I bring my wife, you bring your wife. It's amazing, because what we're saying is this company is doing something really cool for our family. That's how cool is that company? And that idea around employee engagement, and it kind of leads to retention in a lot of ways. So I love that.
Yeah, I think the best examples for me when someone comes to me and says, "Would you like to be a sponsor of our event, or would you like to sponsor our organization?" To me, it's when they ask me what I want. What would I like to see out of this? And believe it or not, that doesn't happen a lot. Sometimes, like, here are the packages.
Yeah, right. That's
So
right.
about you're selling the bronze package or the
Right.
or the platinum package, versus like, would you like to be? So here's what we're doing. Here's how we think this could help you. But what would you like to see out of this? So one of the things we've been talking about is if you're planning an event, it might be important to have some corporate sponsors, to have some partners come on to help supplement the cost, or to help sort of support you in that. And you mentioned that you had worked with Wegmans, which is a sponsor for Band Together. And I love that idea. Hey, we need to feed people at this event. Wegmans, you have food.
That's right.
Let's go ahead and take that off of our sort of budget. We've got that covered now, right? So while they may not be, and they likely would write you a check as well, but whether or not they do that, they're removing that cost off your plate, which is basically the same thing at that
Yeah,
point.
an in-kind support. Yeah, and we treat them like a sponsor, and that is a love language that I missed. I'm glad you said it. So if we are working with hunger as an issue, I think it's interesting to think about sponsors that align with hunger, right? So if you're working with a technology company and you want to go ask them for money, maybe you're working with the nonprofit that aligns with that STEAM or STEM education. They're like, hey, we're supporting this. This is going to make sense for you all. There's mission alignment.
Yeah, and that's the positioning with the brand that I think is important.
Yeah.
So if I'm planning an event and I'm seeking a sponsor, I want to approach companies that I believe are going to be positioned well with what we're doing. So in this case, there is a nonprofit partnership involved with this event,
Right.
and if the nonprofit partner is a STEM nonprofit,
Yep.
then going to something that has to do with science, with education, that has to do with technology makes a lot of sense versus someone who's in another completely different industry. So yeah, I like that. But I think positioning is important. I think how you build and craft that pitch and show the connection between your event and the people who will be at your event, and how that audience is going to really connect with your brand.
Yep.
Is important as well. But any other things that you're seeing out, just thinking about the music industry, and we could go down that path, but really kind of keeping it on branding. How are you seeing anything that's different, cool, unique in terms of how brands are associating themselves in the music industry? So, with event marketing, with music festivals, obviously you can create these experiences, right? And I think you guys do that a little bit, where a brand can create this unique experience at the event, maybe pre-event, post-event, and that. But are you seeing anything else that you think is cool, that you've heard about, or anything come to mind that might be a good idea for someone if they're thinking about creating an event in terms of creating an experience or creating something that might be a connection piece for a partner or for a brand?
Yeah, this will be kind of way out there. I'm going to go way out there and I'll bring it home. Like if you go to like a high-end event where they've got like bourbon tasting tent that's run by some big company, and you're invited to go to the tent. So it could be like a golf tournament and you've got bourbon tasting. I think at some point in time we will see weed tents where people will go, some company, maybe it's Brandfuel, will be the first company, maybe it's a Coachella or something like that in California where it's legal. But I think you'll be able to roll a joint there and try weed, just like whatever. I think companies will start to define themselves by leaning into some things that are kind of edgy like that, which gets me excited. I do love what some brands are doing, like Liquid Death, and there's some brands out there just like on the edge of everything, and so I'm excited about brands that are willing to be a little bit unique and different and flavorful and fun, bringing it back home. I think there's an opportunity to always get creative, so hire Brasco and work on an event strategy to think about something like Dare to Care, where you dare someone to do something on stage or before the show to raise money, where you don't get the money from the dare, which you normally would, but it goes to the caring part, it goes to the nonprofit. So I dare you to shave your head We'll raise $5,000 for that. Maybe you don't want your head shaved because it's beautiful hair. You have to pay $10,000 not to have your head shaved. Yeah. Maybe we do it on stage. I think these type of activations, as you were talking about, and experiences around branding, especially if it can be mission aligned, really, really smart. I think it's a lot of fun. I do think there's this idea of taking the physical manifestation of the event and turning it into some sort of a digital experience. So whether that's AR, VR, whatever it may be, or AI, I do think there is something where you could engage people afterwards. And certainly QR codes, we do all the donate to give, text to give, Wi-Fi passwords could be Brasco. I mean, you just start thinking about the digital world and collecting data so that it can be used valuably for the person who was at this event and then they've forgotten about the event, but maybe they're getting a discount to Wegmans next time because they answered the survey or they went to the booth or whatever it may be. So I think there's a real opportunity to do two things at these events. One is return on their investment like that. Can we track that they gave us $10,000, they hired 2 new employees? Can we track that someone stuck around because as a staff member because their employer was just so great to them and they loved what they did for them? And you track the business that came in because of the investment. And while most brands, say they want to give back on a CSR side, maybe that ROI is also important. If we can do that, then they're going to come back for sure. The second is ROC. So we got ROI and ROC. I just end with return on community. What does that look like? Companies are embedded in these locations like where we are in Raleigh. I think about Amazon. I don't know if they're a really corporate-minded giving kind of company. They probably aren't. But I do know that Brasco and Brandfuel, we give back because our people live here, our families live here. We care about this community. And so that's return on community. There's real value in that. And I think when you can convey that in some way, especially if you're looking to, acquire talent or new business locally, being a brand that cares, being a brand that really cares and delivers return on community, I think even if you don't see the dollars come back from that, I think that's the stuff of legend, the stuff that matters. And I think people see through all the money-making ROI stuff, but what they really want to see is a brand that truly cares. And that's, I think, mission alignment, right to the bottom line.
I love that, return on community. And something we say is that community isn't always local or geo. A community could be a group of like-minded people. It could also be an industry that you're just really focused in, or a certain type of audience that you're talking to. We oftentimes do think about community as local, and Band Together has done a fantastic job of reshaping our local community and nonprofits here through music, and we really appreciate you joining us, and looking forward to the Brandfuel Legalize It tent with Bob Marley playing over the on the speakers while everybody can hang out there.
Get in line.
One day, right? But thank you again, Danny. Appreciate you joining
thank you for
the
having
podcast.
me. I really appreciate it. It's been great.